In the late 1800s, tucked deep inside the rolling hills of Briar Ridge, Kentucky, lived a family that at least on paper should have been completely ordinary. The Hawthornes were farmers, churchgoers, and longtime locals, a family whose roots were said to reach deeper than the very oaks that surrounded their land. Yet over the decades, locals told stories about them and hushed voices stories about happenings on their farm, strange patterns of behavior, and events that never received proper explanations. This is their story. Part 1. The River, the House, and the First Signs. Approx. 1,800 words when Elijah Hawthorne brought his young bride, Clara, to Briar Ridge in the spring of 1897. The valley was a quiet, beautiful place. The air carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, and the sound of the river drifted all the way to their porch. The couple had purchased an aging farmhouse, white paint peeling, the roof slightly sagging, but Clara loved it instantly. To her, it felt like a new beginning. To Elijah, it felt like home. They spent their first months repairing the place. Villagers often recalled seeing them laughing as they worked, Clara scrubbing the front steps, Elijah hammering shingles on the roof. By autumn, the house looked reborn, almost proud again. But the locals also recalled something else, something subtler. The Hawthornes seemed happy, yet a quiet unease hung over them, especially around the river. Whenever Elijah walked near it, he looked over his shoulder, as if checking whether he was alone. At first, no one thought much of it. The strange map. Inside the farmhouse was a small room they used for storage. One afternoon, while cleaning cobwebs, Clara discovered an old rolled-up map tucked behind a wooden beam. Its edges were torn, browned with age. On it, the valley was drawn with surprising detail, far beyond what any local surveyor at the time could have produced. And on the back, in faded ink, a warning: do not disturb what lies beneath the river's bend. Clara brought it to Elijah, expecting him to laugh at the melodramatic message. But instead, he went pale. He took the map, rolled it tightly again, and placed it inside a drawer they rarely opened. "It's nothing," he said softly. "Some old legend drawn by people with too much imagination." But Clara remembered that look in his eyes. It was fear, real fear, and the map was only the beginning. Part 2. The settling, the family, the growing rumors. By the early 1900s, the Hawthornes were no longer just a young couple fixing up a farmhouse. They were a family. Their first son, Matthew, was born in 1901. A daughter, Rose, followed 2 years later. And in 1906, their last child, Samuel, came into the world. Neighbors noted that the children were polite, well-mannered, and unusually quiet for their ages. Some said they resembled Clara, gentle and observant. Others joked they had Elijah's seriousness from the moment they were born. But everyone agreed on one thing: the Hawthorne children never played near the river. Not once. Not like the other children. Clara always kept them close to the house, and Elijah built a fenced-all, sturdy, unnecessary between the southern field and the river's bend. When villagers asked why, he would simply shrug and mumble something about safety. But no one believed that explanation, because the river was shallow, calm, and safe enough for a toddler. Night sounds. Around 1910, new rumors emerged. People living near the Hawthorne farm reported hearing strange sounds late into the night, rhythmic, metallic echoes, like someone striking the ground with tools. Sometimes the noises lasted for hours. Elijah claimed he was simply clearing stones from the field or repairing the barn foundation. But the noises came from the direction of the river, not the barn, and he refused to let anyone help. One evening, Clara visited a neighbor and confided something unsettling. She said Elijah had become distant and had taken to walking the fields at night, lantern in hand, circling the property as if searching for something or guarding it. Clara worried he wasn't sleeping. She worried he was unraveling under stress. But she also said something else, something she hardly spoke above a whisper. "Sometimes, at the river's bend, I feel like someone is standing behind me, even when I know I'm alone." Part 3. The letter from the past. Everything changed in the winter of 1912, when a traveling historian arrived in Briar Ridge. His name was Professor Alden Pierce, and he claimed to be studying early settlements of the valley. When he learned Elijah Hawthorne lived on the old farmhouse property, the professor asked to meet with him. Elijah reluctantly agreed. According to Professor Pierce's notes later archived at the small-town library, the meeting was cold, abrupt, and peculiarly tense. The professor showed Elijah an old letter, dated 1834, written by a man named Jonas Reed, one of the valley's earliest settlers. The letter described a series of disappearances near the river, strange underground tunnels discovered beneath the soil, and a warning: no home built on that land will know peace. Elijah refused to read the entire document. He pushed the letter back across the table and asked the professor to leave the farm at once. Professor Pierce wrote only one more line about the meeting: Mr. Hawthorne knows far more about the land than he admits. The children change. Around this time, people noticed another shift, this time in the Hawthorne children. Matthew, at 11 years old, had grown intensely protective of his younger siblings. He refused to let them wander beyond the yard. He insisted doors remain locked after sunset, and he often watched the tree line with an expression that seemed old for his age. Rose, normally gentle and soft-spoken, started waking from nightmares, always crying about the man near the water. Samuel, the youngest, began drawing strange symbols on scrap paper. Not childish scribbles, no. These were intricate loops and shapes that resembled markings found on old mining maps or geological surveys. No one understood how a 6-year-old could draw like that. But the drawings were always the same shape, a circular pattern, with something dark at the center. When Clara asked him what it meant, Samuel would answer quietly, "It's the place Daddy doesn't want us to see." Part for the night in March. Escalation begins. On a cold night in March 1913, a powerful storm swept through Briar Ridge. Winds tore across the valley, and the river rose higher than anyone had seen in years. Around midnight, neighbors reported seeing lantern light moving frantically across the Hawthorne fields. It was Elijah, running, searching, desperate. The next morning, the storm passed, and Elijah was seen returning to the house soaked to the bone, carrying something wrapped in an old coat. Some believed it was a bundle of papers. Others swore it looked heavier, like an old box or metal container dredged up from the river. No one asked him directly. No one dared. But from that night onward, Elijah seemed more on edge than ever. He kept the family inside. He boarded up the windows facing the river. He even removed the tall fence and replaced it with a new one twice as tall, reinforced, and sealed at the bottom to prevent anyone from crawling under it. The children were forbidden strictly, fiercely forbidden from going near the southern part of the land. And then came the last clear sign that something was desperately wrong: the tunnel. In late April, Matthew was exploring the barn loft when he found a wooden hatch hidden beneath an old grain tarp. Curiosity got the better of him. He pried it open, expecting to find storage. Instead, he discovered a narrow stairway leading underground. He ran to tell his mother, but before Clara could investigate, Elijah stormed into the barn wild-eyed, sweating, and slammed the hatch shut. He grabbed Matthew by the shoulders, shaking him harder than anyone had ever seen him treat his children. "You stay away from that place," Elijah hissed. "You hear me? Stay away or this family won't survive." Clara pulled her son away, horrified by Elijah's behavior. But the fear in Elijah's eyes wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was recognition, as if he knew exactly what lay beneath that barn, and exactly why it should never be opened. In May 1913, the air around Briar Ridge had grown heavy with whispers. Farmers passing by the Hawthorne property spoke in low tones about strange lights at night and the constant banging from the fields near the river. But no one dared approach too closely. One afternoon, Clara decided she could not live in constant fear. She returned to the barn loft with Matthew, determined to at least peek at the hidden hatch. The moment she pried it open, a musty, earthy smell rushed upward, almost suffocating her. The wooden steps descended into darkness, damp and narrow. Clara called Elijah, but there was no answer. Matthew, ever curious, wanted to step down. "Wait," Clara whispered. "Something is down there." Suddenly, a metallic clink echoed from below, a sound like chains dragging over stone. Matthew froze. Clara felt her heart pound. Then, as if summoned by the noise, Elijah appeared at the barn door, his face pale and drawn. "Close it," he shouted. Now, he grabbed the hatch and slammed it shut again, shaking both of them. But unlike before, his eyes were filled not with anger, but desperation. "They know we're close. he said quietly. "Whatever lies beneath, they've been waiting for someone to find it." Clara did not know what he meant. Part 6. The Family Unravels. Summer of 1913 brought little relief. Strange occurrences intensified. The children began speaking to invisible figures. Objects vanished and reappeared in odd places. At night, Clara often heard soft chanting, as if the wind carried words meant only for her ears. Matthew became withdrawn, pacing the floors at odd hours, muttering about the watchers. Rose, now 10, refused to sleep in her own bed, insisting her room felt wrong. Samuel, only 8, continued his drawings of circles with dark centers, now adding figures around them shadowy, faceless forms. Elijah spent most nights at the river's bend, lantern in hand, whispering words no one could hear. Neighbors said they could see him digging shallow holes, filling them again, and standing perfectly still for long periods. Some swore he carried something, though what, no one could guess. Clara feared for her sanity. She confided to a neighbor that the house is alive, and it knows we're here. Part 7. The River's Secret. It was in late September that the river revealed its most terrifying secret. After heavy rains, a portion of the southern bank collapsed, exposing what looked like the mouth of a tunnel-old stonework, covered in moss and mud. Matthew, against all warnings, approached it. He peered inside and suddenly recoiled, screaming, "There's something moving." Clara ran to pull him back. They reported the sighting to no one. Any outsider's involvement could provoke Elijah's wrath. But that night, the river glowed faintly, not with moonlight, but with a strange phosphorescence-like eyes reflecting from beneath the water. The glow pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Elijah was seen standing at the riverbank until dawn, staring into the tunnel as if it spoke to him. He did not sleep. He did not eat. And the children Matthew, Rose, and Samuel began whispering to one another in a language Clara did not understand, drawing more circles and symbols she dared not question. Part 8. The Historian Returns. Professor Alden Pierce returned to Briar Ridge in the autumn of 1913. He claimed to be investigating the old settlements again, but his real purpose became clear. He sought the Hawthorne property specifically. Elijah, anticipating this, refused to meet him at first, but the professor persisted, and finally, one stormy evening, they confronted each other in the farmhouse. According to Professor Pierce's notes, Elijah spoke in hushed, urgent tones, revealing snippets of knowledge older than any living memory. He described tunnels beneath the river, lined with stone and etched with symbols. He spoke of disappearances spanning decades, of men and women lost to curiosity, and he warned of something watching, always watching, waiting for the foolish to uncover the wrong path. Professor Pierce left with more questions than answers. His last note reads, "I fear the Hawthornes are guardians of a secret that should never see the light of day." Part 9. The final night. Winter arrived early in 1913, with storms that blanketed Briar Ridge in snow. On December 12th, neighbors reported a horrifying sight. The Hawthorne farmhouse was dark. The fields lay silent. The river churned unnaturally fast, almost boiling under the snow. Then, around midnight, screams echoed across the valley. Lanterns flickered in windows, doors slammed, and the sound of something enormous moving through the snow reached the village. By morning, the farmhouse was empty. Elijah, Clara, and the children were gone. The doors were locked, no signs of struggle. The barn hatch remained sealed. The river, calm once more, offered no clue. Locals searched for months. They never found the Hawthornes. Some believed they had drowned. Others whispered that the river had claimed them for its own. The land was abandoned. The house decayed, just as it had when Elijah first arrived. But those who passed by on moonless nights claimed they could see lights in the windows, shadows moving behind them, and a figure at the river's bend, always watching. Epilogue: The Long Shadow. Today, the Hawthorne farm still stands, untouched except by time. Researchers and thrill-seekers visit the property, but most leave uneasy, reporting strange sounds, sudden cold winds, and glimpses of children in the shadows. The river, serene by day, seems to pulse faintly at night, hinting at the mysteries buried beneath. And in the small Briar Ridge Library, Professor Pierce's notes remain, cataloging what little the world knows, and warning all who read them, some truths are not meant to be uncovered. Some families are not meant to be found. The Hawthornes of Briar Ridge vanished over a century ago, but their shadow lingers, long and dark. Over the valley they